Me, 31 male European with my girlfriend, 29 female Chinese, of 1 year. Very different cultural expectations of financial management. Original post. My girlfriend and I are coming up on the 1 year mark, and that's brought up with some conversations of our future and our future together. Something that came to light in a casual discussion was how we have completely different expectations of financial and household management and how it should work. I think that we should be contributing equally and get equal say in financial decisions. This probably wouldn't be too easy, and we would both need to work hard to accept compromises. She has a simpler plan. She should be 100% in control of everything. Her view would be that I would reroute my paychecks into an account in her name, and she would pay all the bills out of that, and I might be given an allowance. This isn't the first time that she's brought this idea up. It was mentioned very casually about 6 months ago. I assumed that it was some sort of joke because it was just too ludicrous to believe. She's angry with me now for disagreeing with this plan because she says we've talked about it. And because I didn't object, that meant I agreed. Her point of view is that this is just how marriages work in China. It's how her parents, divorced acrimoniously, did it, and she can't imagine the other way. My point of view is that marriage should be a partnership, and we should be looking for a compromise as equitable as possible. I won't be giving up 100% of my financial freedom under any circumstances. I'm not Chinese, and we're not in China. And she's more than happy to adopt Western standards for things that suit her. I've another concern that she feels that she needs to send money to home to support in retirement. This is another cultural difference that I'm having trouble accepting. My parents are lower middle class, have worked their entire lives with their eyes on retirement savings, and are now approaching retirement with good pensions. My girlfriend's parents, who I've not met, seem to be very well off. A pediatric surgeon and an owner of a successful business. But from what my girlfriend has told me, they're very far from frugal and don't have any retirement plans beyond having their daughter send them money in support. I'm not crazy about the idea of using our money, which should be supporting our family and future, to prop up their lifestyles. Right now, we seem to be at an impasse. She won't even discuss any arrangement other than the one that she's envisioned, and I'm unwilling to compromise on the need for compromise. Does anyone have experience of similar culture clashes who might be able to offer guidance? P.S. Some information that is probably relevant. We don't live together, though we spend almost all of our time together in her place. She owns her own house, I rent a flat. We both work and are reasonably successful. I switched careers a couple of years ago, and I'm getting out of an entry-level work now. I expect my salary to increase significantly over the next 5 years. She's reached VP level in her career but has suffered a setback after being driven out of one company. She started a new job at a lower pay grade, but with much better prospects. Overall, I would guess that she earns more than me now and will continue to do so throughout her careers, unless I hit lottery level odds with a successful startup, not by integer multiples. PPS. Also, we're not in China, we live in London. I'm from another country in Northern Europe. She was born and raised in Shanghai and was sent to school in England as a teenager. Her parents and both of their new spouses are still in Shanghai. Now for the comments before reading the update. On a side note, the wife controlling all income with an allowance to the husband is also a Japanese thing. Probably something to do with women being in charge of the household. The supporting parents and old age thing is very much a Chinese Asian culture thing. So much so that China relaxed the one-child policy partially because it was causing issues with caring for seniors in retirement. I strongly suspect that what you and your girlfriend have are incompatible. If you can't agree to compromise, you better be splitting up. Some things are never going to work themselves out. This person says you're absolutely right. Whenever these threads come up in our relationships, there are inevitably a ton of comments from people saying, screw culture. They're in X country. She needs to realize that what she wants is crazy, etc., etc. And I've never understood that. She literally has spent 30 years having her culture ideas drilled into her head by family, friends, TV, the internet, etc. She's not crazy to want those things. They are reasonably things that are done where she grew up that she is now comfortable with, and she's not going to just magically change her mind. I'm currently in a mixed relationship. I'm white, boyfriend is Chinese, and it's not always easy. There are definitely things we have in the past disagreed about, and some that we still do disagree about. Heck, we see a therapist who specializes in Chinese culture issues. I can see OP getting some compromise out of this if he can get his girlfriend to communicate, but I don't think it'll happen without him making compromises too. Perhaps on the money being sent home, he tries to suggest that she can do that out of her own free spending money budget, or if he's concerned about the money going into the right places, they only send necessary gifts, pay for plane tickets to see family and other things that aren't wasteful. On the money management thing, perhaps they have two accounts, a joint one and one for him. It doesn't sound like she wants one, and he gets a certain budget in his personal account for his own stuff automatically from direct deposit or whatever. That's really just a modification of the 3-account system that a lot of people use successfully. What you say is very true, but there can also often be a manipulative element entwined in this traditional thinking. I come from a mixed East Asian Western family, and a glaring example is what I like to call the bombshell. If members of my family want you to do something they know you might have a problem with, then they will hide the issue until the last possible moment and then spring it on you when it's very difficult to disagree. This leads into the point that I wanted to make to OP. Sometimes compromise and wanting to talk things through seems to be seen as a sign of weakness. After the first few bombshells, I dug my heels in and refused to do unreasonable things at short notice. Example: 2 weeks before a planned flight overseas, they wanted to have my grandfather's ashes disinterred so they could go to a Buddhist monastery there and be prayed over. Only then was I included in the early discussions and able to steer them. If I was OP, I'd develop my own solid and unyielding plan for the family's finances, which would include a joint house account and a personal account where he could deposit an amount matching the money she was saving and sending to her own parents. This would be to ostensibly provide for his parents. If the girlfriend complained that they have a pension, he should counter that her parents are rich. I'd suspect that some of the problem may come from what she views as a weak financial plan for the future. There may also be the issue that she judges her career as being a higher status than his, thus elevating her as a de facto head of the house. This person says if the members of the family want you to do something that they know you might have a problem with, then they will hide the issue until the last possible moment and then spring it on you when it's very difficult to disagree. Yeah, like in the middle of the family dinner. I totally get that. Manipulation is something my boyfriend has seriously had to consider once he started getting therapy. Before his therapist pointed it out, he didn't even think about it as manipulation. I don't think. His mother and his previous girlfriend are both experts at it, especially doing that thing where they tell him to do something he doesn't acquiesce, they blow up. Then a few days later, they are back being sweet and nice. Then they ask him in another way, he still says no, they blow up again, etc. It's like a push-pull, and they are just really hoping the next time he'll give an answer they want. It's a really emotional, hurtful cycle, especially with his mom. I think it's one of those things where children are supposed to be obedient and respectful. And she finds it impossible to back down even if she's wrong, because that would show weakness, and that would show that him rebelling will get him what he wants. That said, OP may or may not realize that that's exactly the type of grief his girlfriend will get from her own family if she tells them, sorry, we're not sending money. She is also trying to balance her own emotion and her family's emotion here too. That can be the hardest thing to pull away from. I know when I was dealing with similar issues with my boyfriend, it felt like a two-pronged attack to him because I was unhappy for reasons that were completely different from his parents' reasons. He obviously didn't want to disappoint anyone, but that's not how it works. Now for the update. Update. My Chinese girlfriend of almost a year thinks that if and when we get married, I would deposit all of my money and income into an account solely in her name. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm also not comfortable with her sending all of her excess money back to her parents in China. Apologies for the length. I'm a bit out of it, so this isn't the most concise writing I've ever done. First, I'd like to thank everyone for their feedback from my previous post. It gave me a lot to think about the strong culture differences between us and about some specific personal issues too. On sending money to her parents and the filial piety in general, I decided that I didn't really have any claim on how she spent money on her family, and the cultural institution was too deeply ingrained to try and tackle it. So long as we had separate income and savings, I think it makes sense for her to fulfill her duty to her parents if she sees fit. On a wife controlling all finances, there seemed to be much less consensus as to whether or not that was normal or the done thing. In spite of some people thinking that it might be a good idea, I definitely still wasn't on board. It also annoyed me how we were splitting bills was heavily weighted against me, but she still made me feel guilty any time I asked her to pay for anything. Then, something that I didn't ask about, that came up anyway, was how we shared responsibilities in the relationship outside of money. She has very specific and strict ideas about what I guess you would call chivalry. In her view, men should treat women like princesses all the time, carrying handbags, umbrellas, shopping, opening doors, walking on the right side, paying for everything obviously, taking up as little room in bed as possible, cooking meals, cleaning her flat. There have been a few examples of her being careless about my money. The worst was a few months ago. We were due to take a trip to my home country. A week before we got into a fight, and she told me to cancel our accommodation reservation. I thought this was the first step in a breakup, which at that time horrified me. I canceled the reservation but begged her to reconsider. After I apologized and she got over her anger, she was shocked to learn that we had nowhere to stay for our holiday. In the end, I booked a much more expensive last-minute hotel on the understanding that we would split the cost. Months later, she still hasn't paid me back and she sulks every time I bring it up. All this made me start to look at her and how she spent money in a new light. Shout out to you, Ralpher1, for predicting almost exactly which brands of handbags she owned. I did some research on her favorite bags and shoes and scarves, and at a guess, I would say she had about 30,000 pounds worth of luxury goods that she'd like to wear and carry often. I had no idea clothes and accessories would cost so much money. I'm not exactly anti-materialistic, but I was shocked by this. I figured that spending habits would have to be part of any conversation on our futures together. I didn't want to give up on what I thought was a good relationship just yet, so I decided to take a risk and open up to her about my financials. I showed her a summary of my income, expenditure, budget, and savings. This was a mistake. She pretty much immediately started talking about what we could buy with my savings and saying that I wasn't earning enough money, so I should stop messing around with computers and go back to working in finance, which is not going to happen. I tried to explain to her that I was showing her this so that she could see how I lived my life and how savings were for the future, not so that she could plan to expand her lifestyle now. We went on for hours back and forth. I think somebody called it in the last thread, but she really did not think what yours is mine and what's mine is mine. I don't even know if she ever came to understand how I would have a problem with that. It seemed so natural to her that I think that she couldn't even see my side of things. I did learn that she doesn't have any money saved up at all. She does earn a lot, but she feels that she has to send any money left over at the end of the month back to her parents. That's why she lives an extravagant lifestyle buying luxury goods. If she doesn't have any money, then she doesn't have to send it back. I still don't really know what financial situation her parents are in. They might not even need the money for all I know, but they all feel that her sending it has to happen. The next morning, she asked me to move to Singapore with her. She wanted to be closer to her parents, and since we were planning our futures together, this pretty much blew my mind. I was trying to figure out if there was anything left to salvage in our relationship. I'd built up a lot of resentment over being treated like a eunuch servant and being expected to hand over all my money for the privilege. She thought that this was a good time for us to move to the other side of the world. So I told her I was breaking up with her. At this point, I don't know if the two of us were ever on the same page about anything because she never saw this coming. She was distraught and didn't know why I was unhappy, and she'd do anything to keep me. I was the best thing that ever happened to her. I fell for this for a couple of days before she got screaming angry at me for breaking a wine glass while I was washing dishes. I'd argue we were equally at fault. She demanded I pay for it. Holy crap, how much money can a wine glass cost? And apologized for being careless. I wish I could say I did something cool, just like leave cash on the table and walk out, but I argued back and got drugged back into the whole thing. I ended up replacing the glass and apologizing, but the next morning I gathered all my stuff from her place and took it home before she woke up. I came back later, woke her up, and told her we had to break up. I'd already explained all the reasons why last time we talked, and I was afraid that she would manipulate me into staying again, so I walked right out after telling her. A cowardly way to do it, I know. That was last weekend, feeling pretty numb with a lot of anger and resentment underneath the surface. Now that I'm away from her, I see that she treated me very badly for pretty much the whole relationship. I'm pissed at myself for not standing up to her and her tantrums and selfishness sooner. I don't know why I let her get away with it for so long. Edit. Quick note that my ex is from Shanghai, not Singapore, and she wanted to move to Singapore to be close enough to visit her family, but still be able to find a high-paying work in her field. Story 2. My boyfriend, 31 male, has been ranting about orange peel theory for days. I, 25 female, am getting uncomfortable and want him to stop. We've been together for about a year and a half and I am previously widowed, relevant later. Prior to our relationship, he's never had an adult relationship, so for a while I was trying to understand that he would make awkward mistakes and we would have to work through them. Lately, he's been bringing up orange peel theory quite a bit, sending me TikToks about why it's unhealthy and bad for your relationship, and then later mentioning it in conversation again. It's essentially someone asking their partner to peel an orange, and if they peel it for you, they pass, and if they don't or complain about it, it's a bad sign or whatever. I love this man, but this is starting to hurt my feelings, and the way he so obviously feels attacked is making me feel gross. I don't know why he's so offended if I'm being honest. This is not a thing that happens for us. I don't test him and I'm always respectful and considerate to him. I would say and do a lot of things for him with or without him asking, just because I like making his day better and his life easier. Him staying so heated about this is making me wonder if he feels resentful for being asked to do something for me, and I have a few past examples that keep popping into my head. I had a pet that my husband had gotten for me die before a big event several months ago. I was devastated, and he offered for us to miss, but I told him it would be good to get my mind off of it for a few hours. We had a bit of a walk to get there, and because I was crying a bit, he asked if he could do anything to make me feel better. I'm a big sap, and it makes me smile, so I asked him if he could romantically ask to hold my hand. He just said, "Can I hold your hand?" And I laughed and said, "More romantic than that." This made him mad and he roughly grabbed my hand and started walking. I started tearing up and he told me I was being mean, only apologizing because by the time we got to the venue, I was crying hard despite trying to hold it together. Another time he had gone to visit his parents and wanted to leave early. My home was closer than his apartment, and I was having a horrible weekend. I was sick and very down. He mentioned he was heavily considering coming to stay with me, and I told him I would appreciate it as I was struggling and missed him. Despite him being very positive about it just before, this flipped some kind of switch in him and he said, "I'll come, but I'm leaving first thing in the morning, so don't ask me to stay longer." I got hurt by this and told him not to come at all then, as I hadn't even suggested that. And suddenly he's, "Oh no, but I want to be with you. I want to support you, baby. Please let me." And eventually I relented and he ended up staying into the afternoon. I have several other instances of him suggesting he wants to help or be kind to me, but the second I take him up on it or ask for him to alter it slightly, he's angry. Then he'll tell me that we just need to communicate more, while he doesn't listen to me and only wants to do things on his own terms, which is fine if he would say that, but he always tries to spin it back on me, victimizing him somehow. I'm tired, and the now daily mentions of how annoying and rude this trend is to him is getting hurtful, but I have no idea how to address this with him without it being interpreted as me being mean. What can I say? Edit. To say that I'm really appreciative to everyone who has taken the time to comment, and I have and will read all of them. I know this is not a great situation, and I have a lot of conflicting feelings about it. I do sincerely love my boyfriend, and I also acknowledge that it's not healthy for me. I'm not sure that I'm at that point of leaving. I know, although I've started to become disillusioned, and I'll be checking out all the resources suggested to me, and I will see where it goes from there. Now for the comments. Sounds to me like he's opposed on some level to being relied upon, but he knows intellectually that that's the nature of adult relationships, so he's going through a lot of cognitive dissonance. He wants to be the sort of person who wants to be there for someone, but he doesn't want to actually do it. That's why he offers to do something nice and is upset if you take him up on it. He wants the credit of offering to do a nice thing without having to actually do it, therefore making himself the kind of guy who would do the thing without the effort of actually being that kind of guy. Up to you if you want to stick around to see if he gets it together. I personally would find it exhausting. I want the kind of a relationship where we mutually and happily support each other. Was it this hard to ask your late husband for support? I'd guess not. There's a reason this guy is 31 and has never had a real relationship. OP says, I feel you're right on this, and I've had a lot of other people suggest this before as well. It was hard to ask my late husband for support, you're right. I try not to compare them because it's a different relationship, and I know it can be easy to view the deceased as perfect, but it definitely is different. He's asked me before if my husband did anything for me that I would like, and I got uncomfortable and said I wasn't sure. I've told him things about my marriage that he was kind of held over me, not negative, just something that I'd say to anyone else, and it has burned me. This person says, I've dated guys like this and it's really confusing because they say one thing, but then when it comes to actually being supportive, it's like pulling teeth. I actually broke up with a boyfriend over this issue. I was having an awful day and he let me know that he was leaving class and he could help with anything. I asked him to come over and talk to me and he said that no, he just got home and didn't want to leave. We were in grad school and lived close by. I figured if he made the offer and I asked for the most basic thing and he couldn't do even that, there was no reason to be with him. I think you're the kind of person who likes doing things for people you care about, makes you question if you're being unreasonable because that's the only reason you react that way to a request for support. But a lot of men really don't want to actually do the work of relationships. They just want the benefits and to feel like a good partner, not to be one. Men like your late husband are rarer than they should be. My most recent ex took the cake in the don't ask me for anything department. He once told me he'd never date someone with a dead parent because it'd be too much baggage, and called his coworker a simp. Comment got deleted earlier for having that word in it because he'd left work early to take his girlfriend to the ER. These guys are really more common than you'd think. I think you can't compare your late husband and your boyfriend in most things, but you have a great bar for how mutually supportive a relationship should be, and I don't see why you'd settle for less. That's all for today. If you're enjoying this story, please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you.